I use a very simple analogy. It's like individuals are just like popcorns, pop, and you put them under heat.
Yeah.
They all pop at different time point, and the manner they pop is also different. So all of us have our own points of limit when we will pop.
Welcome to Coffee and Big Questions, brought to you by the Home Team Behavioural Sciences Centre. This is a lighthearted podcast series that breaks down big questions that are on our minds as we venture into the evolving world. Join us as we explore and gain insights from professionals on emerging topics. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Coffee and Big Questions. My name is Nicole and this is Danny. We're both psychologists with the HTBSC team. And today we have a special guest with us today, Boon Siang. He's the AD for the Criminal Investigation Forensic Psychology branch. And he's here with us today to have a conversation about some of the happenings that we see in the news recently. So maybe I hand time over to you to do a short introduction of yourself.
Thanks for having me here and hi to everyone. I'm Boon Siang. I've actually been with prison service as a criminal psychologist for 15 years. Yeah. So 15 years over there I've been working with sex and violent offenders. At the start of my career, I mainly work with youth offenders, and actually a lot of them relevant to this topic were involved in gang-related violence or some one-to-one kind of conflict situations. Some might even be involved in family violence as well.
I see.
Yeah. And later on in my career, I started to work more closely with sex offenders. And of course, in the midst of perpetrating their sexual offences, they do use some form of physical violence to either suppress or further intimidate their victims. Yeah. But now I'm here in Home Team Behavioural Sciences Centres. I'm glad to be here on this podcast to share my thoughts on this topic.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming with us today. So I think you gave a good introduction and it's a bit of a segue into what's the topic that we're looking at today. So there has been an increase in violent crimes in Singapore in the recent months that we can see from the media. We have incidents of people wielding knives, swords, choppers, and even fist fights that we can see. And it stands out greatly considering that Singapore is actually a very low crime state, or as we are known to be. And I guess this really prompts the big question of, is Singapore seeming to be a more unsafe country? Is that really what's happening? So I think that's our first question that we can throw out to you.
Yeah. So actually what we see in the social media might not represent the truth or the reality. Actually, I did some research before coming for this podcast. Yeah. And try to look at what is publicly available, and actually the stats are pretty, I would say, comforting. Yeah. First, crimes in Singapore has remained low and stable. If we take away the scam situation, yeah, crimes like violent crimes and property crimes actually has been dropping in the past few years now. Yeah. Actually, the violent crimes also remain low and stable. I think a few months ago, our minister also shared in the public about the number of knife crimes in Singapore. It's also hovering about 150 cases a year, and it has remained the same as well. Homicide cases also remain low. Yeah, in the past several years. Then I look at stats about convicted offenders who are sentenced to prison, and those who are convicted for crimes against persons. Actually, the numbers is also the same in the past few years. Yeah, hovering about 2005 to 2006.
Okay.
Yeah. I think some of the videos we see in social media also feature young offenders involved in gang fights. Yeah. So I look at the data from NSF, where they also report youth offender statistics. Actually, young offenders who have been arrested or dealt with also has been reducing. I think many years ago it used to be 4,000 of them. But in recent years, about 2,000
Okay.
dropping. Yeah. And actually, violent crimes among the youth, right, did not feature as the top cases. Actually, the top cases are drugs and sex offences. Yeah. So, all in all, Singapore is still safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, crimes are low, violent crimes are also low. I want to highlight there are some that bucks the trend. Violent cases involving child abuses, or family violence. Yeah, they are increasing trend in these two type of crimes, or violent crimes. Partly could be due to more reporting by victims or members of the public because of higher awareness of the nature of this kind of crime.
Do you think it could be partly attributed to the whole COVID situation as well? More people are staying home. That led to a rise in the number of domestic abuse cases.
Definitely. Yeah. With a combination of additional stress, small living space, and if we compound it when family already experiencing strains in their relationships,
Right.
and they have nowhere to go or let off some steam. Yeah, so all this adds up.
Thanks for sharing that. So I think we are assured Singapore is still a safe country to live in. But I think as you were mentioning, the reporting, it does seem that the perception that Singapore may not be so safe could also be contributed by the fact that there's a lot more reporting. I think we see a lot of it on social media as well, where it seems to come up more often and it becomes more pertinent to people because it's being reported by media. So I think maybe I wanted to throw back the question to ask you: do you think that media has a significant influence on why we perceive it to be more pertinent now?
I think media has their role to report cases, to educate the public. Yeah. But if I bring this topic to social media, right? What's that term called? Is it called citizen journalism?
Yeah.
Where it's so easy for individuals to flip up their phone and record and post it on social media. Yeah. And even mainstream media will use those videos to report their websites. Yeah. So you're seeing more and more of this reporting by the citizens. Yeah. So this behavior gives you a sense that there are more of such crimes happening. Yeah, but actually, even before the days of camera phones, gang fights, rioting are also happening. Right, on the streets.
Yeah.
Or people getting involved in conflict at coffee shops, getting drunk, also happening. But there's no video to record all this or to report. Yeah. So there's a educational role, and I think if you look at the comments that are posted by people who view those videos on Facebook or other social media platforms, you can also see that some comments are actually discouraging this kind of behaviors. Yeah. So those are my thoughts now.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think we are assured that the crime rates have been relatively stable, and maybe it's due to numerous factors that it appears to be that way. And I think one of those factors, if I could maybe add on, is it could also be the close succession of such crimes. I think if we take us back maybe 1 or 2 months, we did realize that a lot of these cases seem to be coming up one after another, not without a lot of time in between. And I guess that also adds to that perception, but also gives rise to this question, which is, could this be the case of, copycat crimes? I think we've heard this term in the past, and do you think that this could be the case where people are maybe more primed to act a certain way because of what they see in the media or they've heard about these kind of cases?
Yeah. About this phenomenon of copycat crime, I think it's not so simple. Like when you see it, you tend to copy it. I think for the general public, it is not enough to tip a person to want to conduct violence. But maybe for a small population who already have the inclination or the motivation, when they see such copycat, such violent incidents. It just spurs them to want to take action. And what spurs them to want to take action could be because of how the public or the media interpret and publicize the violent act. If the media or the public believe that this will bring fame, this will help to push the cause or meaning behind the acts of the perpetrator, then it might further motivate observers who are inclined to push the same agenda to do it. But for most of the public, unlikely they will do it. Because they have no reason to do so. They have their day-to-day lives to go about. But as for your comment about the quick successions in the past recent months, I believe it has to be something to do with the relaxing of SMM.
Right.
Yeah, I think there was also that theory that could all these acts of violence be also due to like kind of pent up aggression, pent up frustration and stress, and then because of the relaxing of the measures, then people kind of go wild.
It could be pent up, or the other theory could be we have been living for 2 years plus where our personal space is much more wider from each other. Like you start to be comfortable, conditioned to having people standing 1 meter away from you. You start to get conditioned or comfortable to have meals, or going out where there's less crowd. But now with things relaxed, you start to have people closer to you. You start to have a lot of other environmental stressor like noise. People shuffling or pushing you, much more closer contact with others. That one may be additional stressor for people to be more impatient, less tolerant. And all these little things could add up to get people to act more aggressively. Might not be up to the point where they go and physically attack someone, but aggression might just come up.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that is really insightful. I think that also brings us to another question. I think you did mention a bit of like that inclination and motivations, and that could be a bigger driver for. So I think aggression is also along those lines of maybe a more innate condition, and that kind of like makes or maybe puts some people at a greater risk of turning towards violent behaviors. So I guess that leads us to maybe my next question, which would be, are there certain psychological conditions or these inclinations that could increase the propensity of an individual to turning to violent crimes, or that kind of outburst that we see in media?
I said in my introduction, I had worked with violent offenders in prison before. So in the course of work, we do try to find out what are the risk factors that contribute to them acting violently. So some of these risk factors we can classify into 3 groups. One is their historical risk, whether the person already had a past tendency to use violence. And we look at the severity of their violent behaviors in the past, the context that they use it, and what were the other problems they had in their life. It could be employment problems, problems with relationship, could be intimate ones or non-intimate ones. It could be mental health conditions that they had in the past. Then the other family or group of risk factors are related to the current clinical issues they might have. For example, mental health. Are they still struggling or having to cope with some mental health condition? Or are they abusing any drugs? Because alcohol is commonly known as a risk factor. They can get someone to be more aggressive or less inhibited. And the last is the risk management factors. Is the person aware of his or her problems that led to violence? Is the person seeking help to address those problems. Yeah. So by looking at all these three areas, we formulate an understanding of why a person uses violence. Yeah. So in short, there are psychological risk factors. There are also behavioral risk factors that we look at in the past and the things that are happening in the person right now. Everyone's risk factor will be different. Triggers that led them to use violence will also be different. I use a very simple analogy. It's like individuals are just like popcorns. Pop. What do you call it before they pop? Kernels or corn? Kernels?
Yeah, kernels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you put them under heat.
Yeah.
They all pop at different time point. And the manner they pop is also different. So all of us have our own points of limit when we will pop. Some might pop later, some might not at all. Some might pop earlier. Yeah.
I think we are talking about risk factors, right? And you named quite a number of them: psychological, your environment as well. And I was just wondering, because as a gamer myself, I play video games, and some of them might be quite violent, shooting games or those hack and slash kind of games. And I'm just wondering whether that, in your opinion, whether that also contributes to more tendencies of violent acts.
I did some research as well, a quick read on this topic, and the findings still mixed. Yeah, and actually, what's important is the debriefing part. Yeah, and the protective factors that is around persons who are involved in this kind of games, especially young persons. For example, if a youth engage in this kind of games, but they are responsible adults who are around them to remind them that this is just a game. In day-to-day life, we don't go around shooting people.
Yeah.
Right. And there are consequences to those behaviors. Yeah. Then it actually mitigates whatever potential harm to the person. Yeah. And actually, when you game, you also derive some satisfaction. Right? There's some motivation in some games. Right? And if we can also help youth or gamers find other forms of activities that can also derive the same form of satisfaction, then there's also a form of intervention. For example, sports. Right. Sports also involve body contact. Some could be also aggressive. But there are rules in place. There are consequences in place, like red card, send off for really aggressive or violent behaviors in a soccer field. So those are examples of intervention that we can help direct the youth's energy to healthier forms of activities.
I think that's a good suggestion. Then moving on from there, right? I'm just thinking another offshoot of playing too much video games or violent video games in this sense. Do you think that it will lead to the point where people get desensitized? Because we're talking about how, us as part of the community, we try to help out or do intervene in those violent situations. I'm just thinking whether or not playing too much of this kind of video games, would it desensitize us to the point where we might feel like we don't need to help out? This is something that is quite normal, a normal occurrence, or like the sight of violence is so desensitized in us that we don't feel it's such a big deal.
I don't know about that. I feel at this point, gaming is still in a, what do you call it?
Grey area.
Not an immersive experience yet.
Right.
You're gaming with a screen in front of you.
Yeah.
Be it a LCD monitor or a mobile phone screen. So you're still, most part of you is still in a reality. whereas you're just responding to a stimuli on the screen.
Mm.
And so you're not immersed in that environment, and the things you see on the screen, although it's realistic, but it's not immersive yet. Yeah. But I don't know about the future.
Yeah, because
When-
with the rise of like the metaverse and everything, VR, that kind of stuff, then this immersion might become even more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, it depends on how it appears to us, because now video games, although it's still realistic, but it's not so realistic to the point where it's still
It's not
almost
lifelike.
like reality.
Yeah.
You still know that it is a bit graphic, cartoonish kind of gruesome or bloody
Yeah,
images. Yeah. So the brain is still able to interpret that's not real. Yeah. It is still graphically put up.
Yeah.
Of course, I think there could be telltale signs.
Mm.
If a person start from gaming to excessive gaming and start to experiment some of those gaming behaviors. For example, I think they will use being reported, right? They will go and buy some weapons.
They are very similar to the in-game weapons.
Yeah. Some even experiment with building a bomb and try to detonate it
Oh yeah, I think I heard.
in the East Coast Park or somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, then that's something that is sending you the indication that he or she has crossed the line to the next level. Yeah, where experimentation or in their online behaviors where they could join some groups or forums that talk about these things. That could be a sign of more dangerous attitudes, where it really translates into behaviors in the real life.
Yeah. Thanks very much. So, I think we talked about the risk factors, and I guess this also then leads us to the other side of the coin. Is there room for rehabilitation when someone commits a violent act that is so severe? And we understand that there's several risk factors, right? How does one then come back from that? Is there a possibility, and what might be the roadmap, if any?
Yeah. Answer is definitely yes, lah.
Yeah.
Rehabilitating someone who has committed violence, and usually what I can say is in prison or in the community is to first, like I said just now, to identify the risk factors, right? And to help the person gain insight to the factors that contributed to his or her violence, and find ways to address them. But I must also say, people don't go around using violence all the time.
Yeah.
Most people don't wake up in the morning and say, today I want to
Choose violence.
choose violence, shout at someone or use a knife to attack someone. So by default, humans don't think or behave that way. That means there are already protective factors in us. Either because we know the law, that's why there's a deterrent effect, or because we are good-natured, or because generally we are calm, we're happy with our life, and we need to continue to work, go to school to achieve our dreams and hopes. And because we know using violence will do no good to anyone. So we also help people to identify what prevents them from using violence. Because that's the default most of the time. And if we can help them to find ways to maintain that baseline, that is also a form of rehabilitation.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think that also leads us into another tangent, which is, in the recent cases that we've seen, we've also seen members of the public kind of step up to restrain or to be involved actually in the direct acts that are happening, be it like to restrain or to help to diffuse the situation. So I'm just curious, right, for these violent crimes, what is the community's role? What can we do for the people around us if we spot any risk factors of it going to develop towards that way? Is there anything that we as individuals can do?
I think in our day-to-day lives, simple things like speak kindly, act kindly, and think good about others is the starting point. Yeah, because the moment you use words that are negative or unhelpful to someone, it just causes additional stressors to others. Or it might form you against me, we versus them, the in-group, out-group problem.
Yeah.
We just don't want this kind of tension to happen.
Right.
Yeah. So that's at a more general level. And then the usual things like care and look out for people who are in distress. Yeah. For example, if you observe that someone start to feel more stressed and consume more alcohol, then there is a risk factor. If you know that this friend, after consuming 2 cans of beer, he becomes more aggressive. Yeah. So as a friend, spend some time to speak to him or her, to advise him or her to reduce the alcohol consumption. Yeah. So that those are more prevention kind of work that each of us can do. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I think we have no further questions, so maybe you just want to throw the ball back in your court to ask if there's one thing you could leave us with. What are some of your closing thoughts on this topic?
Again, what we see in the social media or reports does not represent the real situation. Yeah, the stats you can see that's available in the public shows that Singapore is still safe. And we all have a role to play, even in our comments to social media, right? Yeah, kinder words, kinder actions to each other. And if people really want to record, then record, but don't share it publicly. Yeah, share it with the authorities because it can help to solve crimes, prevent crimes. Because if you share it publicly, you also run the risk of traumatizing the public. Yeah, we don't want that to happen as well. Those are just additional thoughts.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time today. We really enjoyed having you here and to shed some light on this kind of grey area or this development that we've been seeing. And we hope that you have enjoyed the podcast as well, and stay tuned to future episodes as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Be kind to everyone.
We hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Coffee and Big Questions. Stay tuned for the next one. Take care.